8 points in the 2 matchups against Edinburgh. Both Griffins wins. Curtis, beautiful feed and a slam dunk by Gillespie.
This is the Westmoreland on the Hardwood podcast on the Westmoreland Sports Network. Here are your hosts, Jack Ridenour and Sean Meyers.
We welcome you into another episode of the Westmoreland on the Hardwood podcast right here on the Westmoreland Sports Network's YouTube channel. Sean Meyers joined by the one and only Jack Ridenour. And Jack, as always, a very busy show. We're almost turning the calendar to February, which means it's about to be the stretch run for many of our teams that are trying to make the playoffs, solidify their postseason standings, or maybe just kind of finish the season on a high note if they're already likely not to make postseason play. So let's waste no further time. We'll jump right into it. Let's talk about our starting 5, our biggest takeaways from this past week, and one that we kind of continue from a week ago, an update, if you will, regarding Bill Swan, the now former Hempfield area boys basketball coach. He made the decision to step away during this internal investigation, Jack, and probably not the ending that anyone wanted to see, certainly not that Bill Swan wanted to see. His second tenure comes to maybe a earlier than expected end with the Spartans. And it's just a tough situation for a guy that's put a lot of time into the program, but it's also equally as tough, if not more so, on the players at this point.
Without question. And I think, like we mentioned last time, I think that's who you really feel for in this situation. I mean, obviously Coach Swan, but also the players and just how their season was trending, right? I mean, I felt like they were in a good spot. And since everything that has kind of transpired and obviously him resigning, they've had a little bit of an up and down, right? They beat Connellsville, they lose to Pittsburgh Central Catholic, but I just feel like this was a season that they could have really made a lot of ground up from, the last few years where it felt like they were getting closer and closer to that goal of making a deep playoff run. And it felt like this year was going to be that season, but this obviously derails that. And for the rest of the season, I think that they've got, their sights set on trying to make the playoffs. They're on the outside looking in right now. And I don't know if they've been able to reschedule the game that was postponed, the Norwin game, so many weeks ago.
Still hasn't been played. I'll tell you that much.
And that, I'm sure, for the Hempfield, that has to give them a little bit of a sense of urgency because Norwin is ahead of them right now in the section standings for the playoffs. Obviously, Norwin, I think, as of last I looked, is on the outside looking in still themselves, but it would give Hempfield still a fighting chance to make it. So ultimately, just a really tough situation all the way around. And again, I think you really, really feel for the players.
And by the way, we mentioned last week, Mark Katarski was filling in at the time. Now he's going to see the ship at least for the rest of the season. They did get a win against Connellsville, so congrats to Spartans and Coach Katarski for that, but kind of blown out against Central Catholic, which is a very good team. As far as Swan goes, this is, not necessarily completely unfamiliar territory. For those who remember him from about 15 years ago, the school district decided to move on from him. He did come back and, obviously mended some fences, but again, his tenure is seemingly over for good at Hempfield this time. I will say this, though, Jack, he is still going to be a basketball fan for life, it appears. I've already seen him at a couple of games across the county. I saw him at a Norwin Knights basketball game. I saw him at Seton Hill University basketball as well. So he's always going to be a basketball guy supporting all the local athletes. So I'm sure we will see Coach Swan time and time again going forward, but his time at Hempfield is now over. Well, how about our team of the week from a week ago? They continued it. The Kiski area boys, they avenged their only section loss earlier in the season when they fell at home against Hampton. Now they go on the road to knock off the Talbots, and Jacob Musselman led what was a very balanced scoring effort. It was great defense by the Cavaliers. And I'm going to be honest, I am shocked that they have been this good. They technically are behind Penn Hills in the standings, but they have the head-to-head over the Indians. They're 7-1. Penn Hills is 8-1, but right now no team in that section is playing better ball than the Cavaliers.
And they have a little collision course at the end of section play. They're the final section game, at least for Kiski area. They'll play Penn Hills, so that's something to circle on the calendar. But really impressed this whole season with the Cavaliers because of all the players that they lost. coming into this season. They lose 3 starters. They obviously lose a really key piece in Isaiah Gonzalez, who was an all-section performer and led the team in scoring for 3 straight seasons. That's a huge void that you have to fill in. But you mentioned Jacob Musselman. I think he's been the big difference this season. I was reading an article, and coming into the season, Kiski area, they really wanted Musselman to be a little bit more assertive and needed some more points out of him. And they've been getting just that and some from him this season. I think that's been the difference this year. Obviously, you do have some guys that came back into the fold from last year. But again, losing 3 key starters, that's a big hole to have to fill. We'll say, so something that I saw interesting, Amari Gonzalez, last I saw, is going to be ineligible for the postseason because he transferred briefly to Monty Christian, decided to pull back from that, and then went back to Kiski area, and he was ruled ineligible. So for the postseason, that might be a little wrinkle with how Gonzalez has been able to take over on the hardwood, especially as, a starter now. But ultimately, this Kiski team, they're trending in the right direction, and that matchup with Penn Hill should be a fun one.
And it's really been the defense, and we highlighted a lot of this when we talked about them last week. But the win against Hampton, they held the Talbots to 35 points. They also limited Plum to 30 points in a section win, Shaler 44, Armstrong 39. So they have been putting the clamps down. And really, if you can hold teams below 40 or 45 points, even if you don't have one prolific scorer, you're going to have a chance to win a lot of games. That's exactly what the Cavaliers have done. They have not lost since the calendar has turned to 2025. Well, a team that has not lost all season is the Penn Trafford girls, and they had to withstand a rally last week. We were on the call, Jack, when they hung on to defeat Greater Latrobe. That was really, to me, a game that was in 3 parts. An unbelievable start for PT, a terrific rally by Greater Latrobe, and then a strong finish by the Warriors. All told, it was a really good game and a massive win for the Warriors, who are in pursuit of their first section title in a decade.
It was funny talking to Coach Janikis after the game, too, because he even mentioned that the game was completely different from what they've been doing all year long. It's normally slow starts that the Warriors have had issues with, and then they come to life later on. It was the complete opposite against Greater Latrobe. They jumped out to a 21-6 lead after the first quarter. I remember you and I talking after that opening quarter, saying, "Wow, they really put it to them in that opening 8 minutes or so." And then eventually Greater Latrobe, and I think the big key was they went to that zone. When they went to that zone at first, Penn Trafford did not know what to do. They make the adjustment of putting DeStefano at the high post, which opened everything up with her ability to facilitate and pass. And she even mentioned in the post game, she had never really done that before, never really played in the high post before, but just understood the responsibility that she had. And I just felt that was a big win for Penn Trafford, knowing that, hey, we can withstand rallies like that. I mean, they almost coughed up, a 17, 18-point lead. It was a 1-point game at one point. So Greater Latrobe, mind you, from my recollection, Greater Latrobe had a chance to take a lead on a layup, and they missed the layup. So, I mean, if that layup goes in, we could be having a very different conversation. I give a ton of credit to Greater Latrobe. They showed some fight, some resilience, the ability to overcome that. I think that they have, again, if they can find their way into the playoffs, I think that they could pull off a major upset. They could really kind of throw some teams off. But for Penn Trafford, big win for them, showed that they can withstand a comeback like that. And not to mention, like Coach Janika said, they have yet to play a full 4 quarters of basketball this year, Sean. I'm imagining when they do, we're going to definitely notice a big difference for them.
Yeah, and Greater Latrobe currently in 3rd place, so they should be a postseason team. They're pretty darn close to this point to really solidifying that. As for Penn Trafford, we mentioned pursuit of a section title. The only hurdle really in the way at this point is Indiana, and the Warriors did defeat the Little Indians previous this season, so they are one up in the loss column. PT is at 9-0. Indiana is at 7-1, and as we mentioned, the tiebreaker currently goes in favor of the Warriors. So that'll probably be their big test in terms of the section from here on out. But 17-0, you can't ask for much better. Maybe it adds some pressure. That said, you'd rather be 17-0 than 16-1, certainly, I would say, if you're John Janikis. So a big win once again. They certainly were tested. Well, let's get into the point, Jack. We mentioned at the onset that you start to get an idea of the playoff picture a little bit. We've already had some teams on the girls' side, including Penn Trafford, clinch. On the boys' side, we have 5 teams that are already in. Greater Latrobe, Belle Vernon area, who we're going to talk about as our team of the week upcoming, Derry area, Southmoreland, and Greensburg Central Catholic. And I would imagine by the end of this week, that number will probably double from 5 to 10 or so. Really, first off, talking about those teams, by and large, they have all been very, very good. And I would say some of them have exceeded expectations. I would say the Wildcats have, the Scotties have as well. Probably what we expected from teams like Belle Vernon and Greensburg Central Catholic. But the benefit of already getting into the postseason, you don't have to worry about that stressor. It's already one of the goals you can check off. And now it's about making sure you solidify your seeding and obviously taking a lot of momentum into postseason play.
And not to mention staying healthy. I think that we have to also look at the teams that we've seen have such great regular seasons and then an end of the season injury in the playoffs and things completely go awry. And so I think that will be something for these teams to really take note of. And especially once they clinch, maybe use that as an opportunity to get some other guys in, build out the depth on the bench, because you never know what's going to happen in a playoff game. You need a quick three in a situation, and so did a good job for you in a game where you already had clinched. They played well, you stick them in there, and they wind up hitting a huge three in a big moment. So I think that this is a time where teams can also throw some wrinkles into their offense, but you're right, Sean. There have been some really good teams that have exceeded those expectations. Greater Latrobe. I felt that Derry was trending into that direction as well. They've hit a little bit of a wall lately, but I felt like they were, after beating Belle Vernon, I think that caught everybody's eyes. I know that Belle Vernon was without some key players at that time, but that felt like a game where, okay, hello, the Trojans are here and they've come to play. But a team like GCC, I think we kind of expected them to be back into this situation. And Belle Vernon, interestingly enough, I know we're going to talk about them in a minute, but if you look at that stretch where they had no Zion Moore, they had no Zoe Wade, they were out a couple other guys, you take that stretch of games away, they could be undefeated. They could be, if not undefeated, it may be just one loss, not four losses. And maybe they don't have that loss to Derry. So a lot of things you obviously hindsight's 2020 to look at, but I think that these are teams that are trending in the right direction, especially for Belle Vernon, especially for Latrobe. And Southmoreland has been quietly making a lot of noise themselves.
Yeah, Scotties have done some really good things since dropping down to 3A. A couple of other teams that are almost guaranteed to be in the playoffs. We talked about Kiski area, Jeanette as well. So it's just a matter of time for those teams. Currently, Penn Trafford would be in the playoffs if they were to begin now as well. So again, that number 5 is going to grow quite a bit, probably just within about a week's time or so. Lastly, Jack, let's shift to the college level for our starting 5 takeaways. Well, Seton Hill women have been a story all season long. They had been perfect in the PSAC. They won a game at IUP last week without their star, Christiane Fry. They also won a tough one against Edinburgh on Wednesday without her, but finally on Saturday, their incredible run in the PSAC came to an end. They suffered their first loss, and it kind of got away early against Gannon. That said, it's still a team that was, at last check, number 5 in the national rankings for Division II. It's been a great story, and now we'll see how they respond after their first setback in the conference.
The big difference in this game, Sean, is Mia Kalic. I mean, I don't know if I was reading the scorebook wrong or the box score incorrectly. 0 points, didn't attempt a single shot. I mean, I think that's the difference. It was a 14-point game, so it's not like they had the doors blown off of them, and it's a top 15
I will
team.
say they got a lot of points cosmetically late, and to their credit, they kept playing the entirety of the game because sometimes teams will wave the white flag. They didn't do that, but it did not feel that close for the vast majority of the game.
It does feel, though, if Kalic scores, I mean, that's 12 points per game right there that, she had 0. And I mean, she had not been scoreless the entire season. So that was, I think, a major outlier type of performance for her. But then Haley Ford has been a nice little resurgence, or at least emergence on this team. Transferred from UAlbany, had a nice performance against, Gannon, 19 points, I think, off the bench as well. So this team is still trending in the right direction. It's just the second loss of the year, but again, I think without Christiane Fry, that means somebody's going to have to step up. And I've seen some other players that, earlier in the year, they were getting some spot minutes here and there. Their numbers have started to soar, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So that Coach Gallagher is going to have to go deeper into her bench. She's talked about the depth, though. She has said that it's a very, very deep team, and I think that's going to be tested the next, 3-4 weeks or so. But they're in a fantastic spot to be, contending potentially for a PSAC title and, who knows, maybe even hosting part of the tournament.
Yeah, they're still the number one seed as it currently stands in the West. They probably weren't going to go undefeated the entire PSAC ledger. And by the way, it was kind of interesting. A few hours after Seton Hill women lost their first PSAC game, the men handed Gannon their first PSAC loss. So it's kind of a reversal of fortunes there between the Griffins and the Golden Knights on Saturday in Greensburg. That'll do it for our starting 5 takeaways. Let's quickly now shift to plays of the week. We have a couple from the high school ranks and one from Seton Hill as well. We'll begin with the Penn Trafford girls, and Tori DeStefano, we talked about her. She was the catalyst in their victory last Monday against the Wildcats. She did it on both ends of the floor. Her fourth quarter steal and score helped PT close it out as called by Jack.
Simply who can stay in the ballgame the longest. A little bit more than 3 minutes to go. DeStefano with a steal. Nice move and a bucket. DeStefano up to now 18 points. 14-point lead for Penn Trafford.
What a job by DeStefano. Had such a complete game the whole way through. A double-double. Almost had a triple-double. 3 steals away from a triple-double. Pretty impressive.
And honestly, I'm not doubting the stat keepers, Jack. It felt to me like she probably was close to 10 steals. If you had told me she'd gotten 10, I would not have been shocked. By the way, I suggest that we rename Penn Trafford's gym DeStefano's Den. How does that sound?
I love that. Yes, let's absolutely do that.
All right. We'll continue plays of the week in that same game. On the other side of things for the Greater Latrobe girls and the Wildcats, they were down big early, but they battled back and had a 15-0 run during which they showed some incredible hustle, exemplified by this play that resulted in a Maggie Meyers finish, with once again Jack detailing the action.
And it works. Bodner misses both. Meyers pries it free. Second try's no good. Good hands by Bodner to save it. Meyers chisels out some space and swirls it in. She gets into double figures now with 11. 30-16. Less than a minute to go. And Trafford trying to stay perfect after tonight.
I think that sequence right there sums up the way that the Wildcats got back into this game. Just heart, resilient play, hustle plays, and a great finish inside by Meyers, who had a really good game herself.
Yeah, she was the star. It was Carly Burke who led the Wildcats the first time these teams met. She scored a career-high 31. This time she was held in check relatively, but it was Meyers who had a game-high with her performance, putting up a lot of points in that one. We'll continue and wrap up plays of the week with the Seton Hill University men's basketball team and the Griffins. They had a banner week, stunning Gannon, as we mentioned, on Saturday, but they also got a crucial win on Wednesday against Edinburgh. The victory against the Fighting Scots was highlighted by a slick connection from Kedrick Curtis to Gabe Gillespie for a slam dunk, with myself and Roger Down providing the audio.
9 points and 8 points in the 2 matchups against Edinburgh. Both Griffins wins. Curtis, beautiful feed and a slam dunk by Gillespie. A chin up on the rim for Gage Gillespie. Gage Gillespie.
Good stuff there from Gabe Gillespie. He's been a steady force for the Griffins, and of course the facilitator Kedrick Curtis has been maybe their MVP. I would assume Ryan Mice would be maybe the choice right now, but Curtis certainly has an argument as well. Big week for the Griffins. They get a couple of conference wins. That'll do it for plays of the week. But Jack, let's now move to our team of the week, and this is much deserved. The Belle Vernon area boys. They are on an absolute heater. A 9-game winning streak. They're 14-4 overall. They're 8-1 out of Class 4A Section 3. And what they did this past week is about as good of a week as any team will have all year in the WPIAL. They won Friday, they won Saturday, they won Sunday, and all 3 of those were pretty significant victories. They blew out GCC, a 20-point win in the shootout at Seton Hill on Sunday. A day earlier, they edged Knock, and on Friday, they knocked off Dairy Area, redeeming their lone section loss. So I don't think you could ask for much better of a week if you're Joe Salvino.
And especially when you're playing late on a Friday and then you're getting up and playing. Okay, they played at 4:30 on Saturday. Still, that's a quick turnaround, right? You're done back home probably around 10:30, so you're back up for shoot around maybe 10 a.m. Very quick turnaround. And the fact that they were able to do that, pretty impressive. This team is starting to fire on all cylinders. I mentioned it earlier. If they don't have that stretch of time where a couple of the guys are out, we might be looking at an undefeated team right now. I mean, seriously, the way that they've been able to dismantle, like you mentioned, a really good GCC team. I mean, that's not a GCC team that, everybody's been able to walk all over.
That's an eye-opening win to me. Not the fact that they won the game, the fact that they won it by 20 points, playing their third consecutive day.
And they've not to mention, they've scored over 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games. I mean, they had 90 points against West Mifflin a couple games ago. So this is a team that, you get them the ball, you get Zion Moore the ball, you clear out space. I was really impressed. I watched back to some of the game on Saturday against Knock. I was impressed with Tommy Davis. I really like the way that he plays down low. I think he's got great size. He's got a really nice feel around the rim. Really good footwork as well. But again, this team is going to go as Zion Moore goes. I know that they've had some injuries. I know Zoe Wade out right now, but congratulations to him for his commitment. Ohio Dominican, I believe, for football. But this is a team that you got Coach Salvino at the helm. Obviously, he's won a ton of basketball games and a lot of championship games.
Only one person has won more in WPIAL boys basketball than him.
Exactly. And I think that when you've got all of that mixed together, that's going to be a serious championship level team. I think if they take down Elizabeth Ford, who they play next, I think if they take down EF and they dismantle them by, they do what they basically did to GCC. I mean, I think we're looking at a potential favorite in 4A. And again, Knock only a 4-point win. That's a good Knock team. That was a Knock team that was 13-4 at that time as well. So it's not like they're beating these teams that are, 0 for 10 or whatever. They're bad. These are very good teams that they're beating. And then also getting that revenge against Derry. I mean, that was a much needed win for them. And not to mention, I think a statement win with how close they lost in the previous one to the Trojans.
Yeah, and they also won 81-35 at York earlier the week, just to add to it. You talk about Knock. That's a team that's currently tied for first place in their section in 4A, so maybe a little bit of a postseason preview. And if you're the committee and you look at seeding, you see Belle Vernon wins head-to-head against Knock. Maybe that gives the Leopards a major boost in terms of the seeding as they try to maybe solidify. Could they be a 1 seed? Could they be a 2 seed? It could come down to a game like that. So much deserved for the team of the week. Again, they played a brutally challenging schedule, and they passed it with flying colors. And we mentioned Joe Salvino, Zion Moore. He scored 25 against GCC. He only had 20 against Knock, 32 points against Derry area. So he has been absolutely going off. He's going to be over 2,000 points in his decorated career. You mentioned Tommy Davis. Trevor Kovac. Zoe Wade is out, but Curdy Wade is a big part of what they do. Dom Galani, DeAubrey Lightfoot. It's just a team that these guys are very experienced because they've been playing since they were freshmen and sophomores, and now it's all kind of come to fruition for this team. And they're going to have some challenges. You mentioned EF, but this really, it seems like a team that could be a championship caliber team when it's all said and done.
And I think that when you've got guys that have been on also championship level football teams, that's gonna spill over. I mean, I mentioned, I think an episode or two ago about how John Wetzel for Greater Latrobe, you can tell they've carried some of that momentum with them from football into basketball. Zoe Wade's been a part of some insane football teams the last few seasons, and I'm sure, and he's been a focal point for that matter. So he brings
Curdy Wade as well, Galani, Lightfoot, they're all part of Matt Humbert's championship winning team.
And that quickly becomes contagious. And I'm sure for a guy that like Zion Moore, who, is a basketball player, he's now getting a taste of, okay, what is this locker room like for football? What are these guys thinking about? How do they win at the level that they win? And again, that has now started to spill over. I think it's a very experienced team. Coming into this season, they knew they were an experienced group. So if everybody stays healthy and if everything just kind of keeps churning the way it is right now, I mean, I don't see why Belle Vernon doesn't make it to at least the semifinals, maybe even the title game.
Deserve it, to say the least. Belle Vernon area, our team of the week. Let's quickly look ahead, Jack. And again, the playoff picture starting to come into a clearer view. So some of these games very, very significant. this upcoming week. We'll start boys side Monday, non-section, Plum at Franklin Regional. Always a good rivalry show down there. Tuesday, Amani Christian at Hempfield. You and I will be on the call of that one. Norwin at Mount Lebanon. PT at Greater Latrobe. Borough at North Catholic. Belle Vernon at EF. We just highlighted that one. Ligonier Valley at Southmoreland. Bentworth at GCC. Thursday, Jeanette at Clareton. Greensburg-Salem at Penn Trafford. Friday, we will have coverage of Greater Latrobe at Franklin Regional. Central Catholic at Norwin. Kiski area at Shaler. Derry area at York. Waynesburg Central at Southmoreland. Greensburg Central Catholic at Riverview. Springdale at Jeanette. And then on Saturday, Clareton at Greensburg Central Catholic. Girls side, Norwin at Upper St. Clair. A big one on the girls' slate of things for Monday. Borough at North Catholic. Belle Vernon at EF. York at Southmoreland. GCC at Avonworth and Plum at Penn Trafford as well. Tuesday, Franklin Regional at Fox Chapel. Greater Latrobe at Kiski area. Derry area goes to Ligonier Valley. Wednesday, it's Kiski area at Hempfield. Thursday, Mount Lebanon at Norwin. That will be a WSN broadcast. Indiana at Greater Latrobe. Laurel Highlands at Belle Vernon area. Southmoreland at Mount Pleasant. And GCC at Ligonier Valley. And on the college slate, Wednesday, Penn State Altoona at Pitt Greensburg on the men's side. That's a big showdown. Saturday, Slippery Rock at Seton Hill doubleheader. We will have coverage of both games, the women and the men. And St. Vincent College at Geneva for a doubleheader as well. What jumps out about the schedule forthcoming, Jack?
Imani Christian, Hempfield boys. Second meeting, the first one went to Imani Christian. They won by 3, but I'm curious to just see what the ambiance is like at Hempfield. What is the mood? What is the environment with what's been going on around the program there? But then I think Greater Latrobe, they've got back-to-back big games this week if they want to keep themselves kind of top that foothold, if you will. Penn Trafford, Franklin Regional. I know Franklin's kind of slipping, but Penn Trafford, we've seen them last few years. They know how to figure things out at this time of the season. And then over on the girls' side, I think one that jumps out to me, kind of a battle of the present versus the past. Norwin girls, Upper St. Clair girls, last year's champions. Upper St. Clair, I think right now, the favorites to probably win it all. What will that game be like? Obviously a rematch as well. And then Seton Hill with a great chance to bounce back this weekend against the Rock.
Yeah, it is a massive week for Norwin girls. They lost to Tywin against Bishop Guilfoyle in the shootout at Seton Hill, but you mentioned at Upper St. Clair, and then they host Mount Lebanon 3 days later. The Blue Devils currently are in the playoffs as it stands in that section as well. So a couple of opportunities for the Knights to really make some statements this week as they try to defend their championship in 6A. That's going to do it for this edition of the Westmoreland on the Hardwood podcast. Of course, you want to check us out on social media. You want to check us out by going to our website, westmorelandsports.com, on a daily basis. We've got a lot of good stuff there. Westmoreland alum Q&A, our Westmoreland County Sports Notebook, Recruiting Thursday, recaps of a lot of the games. We will have interviews up on our YouTube channel, as well as, of course, the live game broadcasts that are archived. That'll do it from here. We will catch you again next week. My colleague Jack Ridenour, Sean Meyers signing off. We'll see you once again down the road on the Westmoreland on the Hardwood podcast.
This is the Westmoreland on the Hardwood podcast on the Westmoreland Sports Network.